Do you ever wonder, what in the world was it thinking when you hear about a ghost haunting someone? Well, now you can find out. In Ghost Stories The Flip Side, Fiona Fabblestabble, ghost and ghost representative, tells the ghost stories from the side of the ghosts. So sit back and get ready for the real story. The Flip Side.
Hi, Fiona Fabblestabble here. This ghost story is called Grandmother's Pillow, and it takes place in the great state of Virginia, which was one of the original 13 colonies that became the United States. So here goes. Lily Chen eyed the sprawling mansion in front of her as her fiancé, David Cavansword, helped her out of the limousine that his grandmother had sent to fetch them from the airport. Grandmother's estate was beyond intimidating. They had been driven by the chauffeur through a set of tall iron gates and down a long winding road lined with trees until they finally reached the mansion. Lily had known David was from wealth, but she'd never seen anything like this. His parents' house was huge, but this, his grandmother's mansion, was enormous. Lily remembered her conversation with her roommate Kate at NYU in Manhattan the week before. "I'm terrified," Lily had confessed to Kate. "Lily, come on, you and David are perfect for each other. His grandmother can't be that bad," Kate said. I don't know. After what his cousin Melanie said about David's family, all those rumors, and the grandmother in particular, I don't want to meet his grandmother, but I have to before we can get married. Thankfully, David wants to live up here in New York, not in Virginia where his family is. It's the only thing that's going to save this. Oh, come on, Lily. Do you really think what Melanie said is true? She'd had quite a few drinks. I remember you telling me that. To insinuate that David's grandmother is a murderer. Well, she didn't exactly say that. She said people have been mysteriously disappearing from that estate for years. Centuries even. And the grandmother isn't any better than her ancestors. She said she can really be a mean old witch. Oh, come on. She's just jealous because her side of the family doesn't have any money. I'd hate it too if my rich relatives ignored me. Besides, wouldn't they have gone to jail for that? Really? As rich as they are? No. Well, Lily, anyway, everyone loves you and she will too. David's parents are nice after all. They adore you. Just one more hurdle before the wedding. You got this, girl. Back in the present day, Lily squared her shoulders, grabbed David's hand, and prepared to meet grandmother. A maid met them at the door and invited them in while the chauffeur unloaded their bags from the limousine. "Madam will meet you in the east sitting room. I'll take you there," the maid informed them. Grandmother was already in the sitting room when they got there, a lovely formal room. She was standing by a blue sofa, holding a pillow in her hands and lovingly stroking it. It sounded like she was singing softly, though they didn't recognize the words. As they entered, she put the pillow down on the sofa and led them to a lovely antique table by the windows where they sat and talked while a kitchen maid brought tea and petit fours. The maid had a surly look on her face and was barely polite even to grandmother. She glared at Lily as she poured the tea. "That will be enough, Kim. Thank you. You're excused," grandmother said to the maid. Kim stomped out of the room. Wow, Lily thought to herself. She was a lot nicer to Kim than I would have been. She's not a mean old witch. She's really a very sweet old lady. Melanie was wrong. Grandmother sighed and said, "I can't stand that girl. I've been meaning to tell my head of housekeeping to let her go, but help is so hard to find these days." Lily and David nodded. Lily looked around, a little uncomfortable, then decided to make small talk to dispel the negativity in the air. "That's an interesting pillow," she said, pointing to the pillow on the blue sofa. The pillow looked ancient. It was embroidered, and it showed two men in old-fashioned clothing, each holding the leash of a large dog. They all moved to the sofa to look at the pillow. Grandmother said, "That was my great-grandfather and his brother, my great-great-uncle. They were prolific hunters, and they doted on their dogs, Mac and Jack. Mac and Jack had quite the reputation. They were ferocious and determined. They never let go of their prey." She picked up the pillow and ran her hand lovingly over it. This was created by a woman they knew, and it's been in the family for a long time. It must be well over 100 years old by now. Legend has it that the woman who embroidered it had a magic touch for instilling lifelike character into her creations. It certainly has been quite the pillow throughout the years, I'll say. Lily and David looked at each other. Lily raised her eyebrows and mouthed to him, "Quite the pillow?" behind grandmother's back. He just shrugged. Lily moved over to study the embroidery and was looking closely at the dogs on the pillow when she jumped back suddenly. "It looked like one of them wagged his tail," she exclaimed. "Oh, that happens sometimes," Grandmother Cavansword replied. "It's a trick of the light and the thread." She looked fondly at the pillow, smiling. "It's quite magical." She put the pillow back on the sofa and said, "You must need a rest after that long trip. Let's have some tea, then Rose will show you to your rooms." After tea, Grandmother rang for Rose, who appeared quickly and led Lily and David to adjoining rooms, where they hung out until dinner, talking about their plans for the wedding. The house was a bit of a maze, so Lily was glad to have a guide. That night at dinner, Lily picked at her food, her stomach a bit upset by the stress of being in a strange house and meeting Grandmother Cavansword. Also, that weird pillow. Something about it was creepy, and Grandmother seemed to be in love with it or something. Lily ate enough to be polite, but by the time dessert arrived, she was done. She shook her head politely at the serving maid, who just nodded and whisked her dessert dish away. David, however, ate enough for the both of them. Grandmother smiled at Lily and said, "I'm not a dessert eater either. We ladies have to watch our figures." After dinner, they went into the sitting room again, and Lily took a closer look at the pillow with the dogs, scrutinizing it for any movement, but she didn't see the tail wag again. "I must have imagined it," she thought to herself. They played a game of checkers and chatted about things until it was time to turn in. Rose led them to the rooms again. Lily managed to calm herself enough to go to sleep, but about an hour later she was awakened by a monster headache. She hadn't brought any painkillers, so she decided to ask David for some, but he wouldn't wake up, so she decided to look for some in the kitchen. She put on her bathrobe and headed down the hall. She thought she was going the right way, but soon got lost in the large house and ended up in the servants' wing. As Lily was passing the servants' quarters, she heard the surly maid, Kim, talking on her phone. "Yeah, there's the grandson and fiancé in the house tonight. I know it complicates things, but I already put the stuff in everyone's dessert, so they're all down for the count. It has to be tonight. We won't get another chance." Lily stopped in shock to listen. There was a pause in the conversation, then Kim continued. "The head housekeeper hardly ever leaves the house, and when she's here, I can't get away with anything. She's only gone now because her sister got sick and needed her." There was another pause, then. "Yeah, well, she doesn't tell me everything, so I didn't know they were coming. Tonight was the only chance we had to disable the alarm, because the old witch will probably be back tomorrow. You got it turned off, right? So hurry up and get in here." Lily couldn't believe her ears. What was this girl up to? She needed to tell David she could take care of her headache later. Lily was rushing through the house, desperately trying to find her way back to her room when she heard glass tinkle like a window being broken. The alarm didn't go off, so Lily knew what she had overheard the maid saying was true. When she got back to the wing with the family's bedrooms in it, she found Grandmother out in the hall. "I couldn't sleep, and I believe I heard glass breaking," Grandmother said. "There's trouble," Lily said. "I was looking for something for a headache when I heard Kim on the phone talking to someone, and she disabled the alarm. She said she put something in everybody's dessert. Everyone is down for the count. Besides her, you and I are the only ones who didn't eat it." Grandmother's eyes flashed fire, and she seemed to turn into another person. The sweet old lady was gone. "We need to get to the sitting room. But first we need to get David. They'll be after the family. We'll have to carry him. Hurry now, child." They pulled a very sleepy David out of bed, and between the two of them, dragged him down the hall to the sitting room. Lily thought that was strange. Why the sitting room? Was there a safe room there? Well, she didn't dare question Grandmother in the state she was in. When they got to the room, Grandmother instructed her to duck down and hide behind the blue sofa and not to look up no matter what happened. They propped David up behind the sofa with them. "They'll be looking for my jewelry now. When they find the safe, they'll come looking for us," Grandmother whispered. They were getting uncomfortable in their crouched position behind the sofa when they heard a man's voice in the hall outside the room. "We've looked everywhere else. She's got to be in here. Kim says the old battle axe spends a lot of time in here." They heard two men enter the room. "There they are, behind the sofa. What a stupid place to hide. What's wrong with these people?" One of the men asked as he approached them. Grandma motioned to Lily to stay down, but Lily just had to peek over the top of the sofa back. She noticed both men were carrying big guns. She was horrified at what happened next. One man started saying in a loud, sing-song voice, come out, wherever you are, haha, like behind the sofa. He approached the sofa and picked up the pillow, saying, what's with this ugly old thing? He was about to throw it across the room when grandmother rose from behind the sofa and started speaking very intensely in a strange language. The pillow flew into her hand, seemingly of its own accord. She held the pillow in one hand while stroking it with the other hand and continuing to talk in the strange language. Suddenly there was a noise of something ripping open, a flash and a blur, and Mac and Jack burst out of the pillow and onto the floor, growing to an enormous size in the process. They approached the two burglars, growling and showing their teeth, growing even bigger as they advanced. The men just stared at the dogs in disbelief, frozen in place. By the time they realized what was happening and raised their guns to shoot, it was too late. The dogs were upon them. At this point, Lily decided it best not to watch anymore, and she ducked down behind the sofa again. But she could still hear. Lily had never heard grown men emit such hideous screams. She covered her ears to block those out, along with the ripping, growling, and chewing sounds the dogs were making. Slurping, too. David slept through it all. Lily glanced up at grandmother and was shocked to see that she seemed to be enjoying the spectacle, standing behind the sofa and watching it all unfold with a look of grim satisfaction on her face. Finally, it was over. The sound subsided except for a licking sound like a dog licking blood from the floor. Lily heard grandmother praising Mac and Jack, and there was an odd sound like a zipper being zipped up. Grandmother came around the sofa and told Lily that she could come out now. When Lily emerged from behind the sofa, she was astonished to see that the room looked untouched. The pillow was back on the sofa and the floor was clean. Grandmother took her to the kitchen, where she gave her a sweet-tasting drink that she said would calm her nerves and help her headache. Then they retrieved David from the sitting room and dragged him back to his bedroom. Lily went to bed and slept like a rock. The next day, Lily woke feeling refreshed but a little uneasy. She had a vague, fuzzy memory of something in the sitting room. Flashes came to her. Robbers, dogs, screams. Must have been a strange dream. She puzzled about it all day as they explored the estate in nearby town. They returned to the house for dinner, but for some reason she couldn't eat dessert. After dinner, they went to the media room and watched a movie, then turned into bed. The weird dream kept bothering Lily, though. She waited until the house was still. Then, using her phone flashlight, made her way to the sitting room. She flashed her light around the room. It was the same as yesterday. She decided to take a closer look at the pillow. It seemed almost the same, except the dogs, Mac and Jack, had drops of blood on their mouths and huge grins on their faces. And there were two quite modern-looking guns at their feet. Doggone it! Fiona here. I have Grandmother Cavan's sword with me to explain a couple of things, then Mac and Jack want a turn. Yes, this is Grandmother Cavan's sword. I passed a few years ago, and the ghosts here have been positively impossible. And that awful Melanie's still spreading rumors about me. So I feel I must clear the family name. We didn't feed the dogs on a regular basis. We really only used the dogs as a last resort. That's why I had trained staff, including bodyguards and an alarm system. But I didn't realize Kim was such a conniving creature and smart enough to drug the entire household. Regardless, family comes first. Mac and Jack are the last line of defense, and they've come in handy many times for the family over the years, I must admit. And yes, I fired that duplicitous maid Kim the next day. Good riddance. As far as the burglars, I just let it be. There were no bodies after all, so there was nothing to report. Kim did try to accuse me of murder and get blackmail money, but no one else knew her partners in crime had been in my house, and she had helped them disable the alarm, and she drugged everyone too, so there were no witnesses. She was a little too smart for her own good. I pointed this out to her as we sat in my sitting room, the pillow on my lap, my hand stroking Mac's fur. She looked at the pillow like she was seeing it for the first time, and she must have seen something that startled her because she turned pale and fled, never to be seen by me again. And yes, I did put a little something in the drink I gave Lily that night to help her sleep and forget, but I think she'll always wonder. But all's well that ends well. David and Lily got married, and they visited me occasionally when I was still alive, but they seemed to avoid my sitting room. come to think of it, I don't think they ever set foot in there again. Well, thank you, Grandmother Cabin Sword. Fiona Fabblestabble here. I have animal communicator Julie with me today because Mac and Jack have a little something to say. Jack?
That was a tasty snack.
Mac?
Mine was a bit grisly.
Okay. Thank you. This has been Fiona Fabblestabble. You just heard another story from Ghost Stories The Flip Side. See you next time.
This has been Ghost Stories The Flip Side. The ghosts thank you for listening and wish you a long and happy life.